Welcome guests here and online. Please stand for I'd like to open this meeting of the Paradise Recreation and Park District's regular Board of Directors meeting. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Director Alma Green. Director Mary Belfay. Secretary Sue Rodwick.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland.
Here.
And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Here. We have a special presentation.
Yeah, we have a couple of presentations tonight. So the first one is from our new staff member, Kristen, who's going to give us a good description of our neighbor to neighbor program and a little bit about some of the work she's done since she joined us last year.
Good evening, directors. We're going to load the presentation on the screen, but I also have given you a copy of the presentation and then a couple handouts that are already in the presentation just for reference.
Right now, we're in crisis. It's not just climate change.
At the first page. Alrighty, so I'm going to be giving you a little bit of an update on the Neighbor to Neighbor grant. We just really got started, but I wanted to go over what we've been doing so far and how it's looking forward from here. Just a little bit of background on Neighbor to Neighbor, if you're not familiar with, which I believe all of you are, but it is one of the California volunteer programs. So there are many California volunteer programs. Neighbor to Neighbor is a new initiative, and we were one of the grantees. So really awesome. And we are going to start with a video that kind of shows the initiative of Neighbor to Neighbor. In this video, they showed us on our first onboarding session back in April, and it's really touching. So I want to show you guys it.
Right now, we're in crisis. It's not just climate change. It's not just inequality. It's not just homelessness. There's something more fundamental happening. There's a crisis of trust. We've lost both trust in institutions, but we've also lost trust in each other. It's really this crisis of connection. How do we try to connect people in communities? How do we bring people together to rebuild trust in each other so we can actually start to tackle some of these big issues?
I think people are afraid and no one opens the door and everyone's isolated.
Country is so divided. The media also feeds off of that divisiveness, which is not helping. I think human beings basically do have a compassionate side. It just has to be opened up.
All up and down California, people are coming together and working together.
We lost 2/3 of our community in the Caldor fire, but it's still a beautiful community in a different way now.
We started driving around and all of our neighbors' homes were destroyed. My husband said, we need to do something.
I thought one thing that we can do is we can build them some sheds to put their belongings in. When I started building the sheds, I was just doing it on my own. When I got to the next one, I had some help with that one. People would volunteer to help. And we finally got to the last thing I did, the food bank shed, and there'd be 3 cars there with people wanting to help. The dream is to actually put these people in houses that we built.
I just wanted to meet my neighbors. It started out, we were just handing coffee out of the kitchen window. Just cranked open the window and put out a little sign at the end of the neighbor's driveway. Everyone meets at the coffee cart. It's so satisfying to watch people become friends through this environment. For the first time since we've been living here, maybe 25 years now, we now have neighbors waving at each other. Kids are meeting each other in the neighborhood.
With the 5 neighbors around us, we're regularly connecting with one another for whether it's a barbecue at somebody's house or whether we all chip in and get involved at the local park to help with the cleanup.
It is important to have a space where you can go and talk about this is happening in your neighborhood. This is what we can do to make our voice heard.
In our store, we've created a safe space where people can come together locally in their own neighborhood.
Everyone in this community comes to this post office and meets at the bulletin board.
It's a significant thing to have a place like that.
We have this sense of community helping community. Be prepared, understand the dangers, understand who your neighbors are and how you can help each other.
We're here to help people, and that's what we're going to do. And if it's educating or if it's assisting, we're the boots on the ground.
What we're trying to do is to actually invest in communities where neighbors can start to come together and solve problems themselves.
I think the world needs more support from that neighbor, from a friend, from a stranger.
You get to know people and you learn about their story. It really brings about that trust.
Just reach out to someone, or if you see someone doing something by themselves and you feel like maybe you could be of assistance, offer it.
That's the simplest things. And I think that a lot more people need to understand that just reach out to your neighbors, just say hi, say I'm here for you.
You can start with that person and that person can help you connect with another person. And that's how you bring all the community together.
When we come together and we build together and we help each other, that's when we're our strongest.
To be there, not just for disasters, but for everyday life.
We know that neighborhoods that are connected, where people are looking out for each other, naturally become safer, happier, healthier places for people to live.
People are looking to care about their community and are looking to know each other. They just need that door opened.
Every person can make a difference in somebody's life.
We can build each other up and we can build our communities up, but it needs to start neighbor to neighbor. And eventually we're going to take advantage of our most powerful asset. And that's the 40 million people that call California home.
I think that it's just a really great video. That's one of the first things that they showed us before we had even really talked to the grant administrators. That was one of the first things that they showed us. And I think Christy can vouch that it was super empowering to see that video as the first thing before we even learned anything else. So yeah, and then go. Next slides, please. Alrighty, so I have included a map of our neighborhoods. These aren't formal neighborhoods by any means, but we basically had multiple meetings to decide whether or not we would keep Paradise as a whole or divide it into sections. And essentially, they're not divided for event purposes, but rather when we host events that they can get a momentum that signifies what neighborhood they're in. So for example, at our neighbor to neighbor kickoff on September 7th, we will have a huge map with all of the neighborhoods, including Concal, Magalia, Butte Creek Canyon, and then Paradise will have separate colors as well. Because we didn't want to do Paradise all in one, just because we combined evacuation zones. So the Southwest Paradise has combined evacuation zones. And then I believe the Central West one is one evacuation zone, same with the Northwest, but we combined some of the smaller evacuation zones to make it easier to meet people. Alrighty, so the overall key grant outcome is participants feel an improved sense of social connection, belonging, and volunteer stewardship in their neighborhoods. And this is directly from our scope of work from when we wrote the grant out. So that is directly what we wrote. And then our 5 key goals are to improve social bonds and interactions, create a shared understanding, implement evidence-based practices, increase volunteer participation, and cultivate that social connection. And then this is just a really rough timeline of how we're here today talking about this, kind of what has happened. So February 9th, that's when we submitted the application. We got notice of recommendation of awards on March 1st. May, June, it was a lot of internal meetings. And then April 24th, that was our first of 3 onboarding meetings with grant administrators. And that was kind of the first step that we had to take in order to, be knowledgeable on how to take on this grant. And then March and April, more internal planning. And then June 4th and then July 24th, we had our first subgrantee onboarding meetings. And then some volunteer opportunities that we've had internally so far have included trail days at the lake, Johnson Sioux bioreactor composting days, and National Trails Day. And I will say Sophia leads these so gracefully. She is so great at what she does. And these are all to her credit. I did help her with National Trails Day, but the other 2, she partnered with the Boys and Girls Club on the Trails Days, and she she does a great job. And then the events that we've had thus far would be 2 movie nights. And then we also had the Concal public input meeting. You can see a photo there. They're at a station putting their activities for programming at Concal Lake. And then the movie night at the pool, we had 2 of those, totaling around 350 attendees for both of them total. And then upcoming September 7th, we have our Neighbor to Neighbor kickoff. And then the 21st, we have Fall Family Fun Fest. And those will be our September events for PRPD. And then some key metrics that we've collected so far. And this is only in Q2 and Q3 of the grant period for 2024. We've had 414 total participants. That's a pretty good number considering we've only had 8 real events and volunteer days since we've been awarded the grant. So that is really great numbers. 750 participant hours, meaning that's how many hours they've spent doing the activity or volunteering, totaling them all together. And then we had 259 new participants, meaning those are people that have never used the Golden Volunteer platform before or never heard of it and are new. They may be new. They may be new to the Golden Volunteer program. And then 70% of people who sign up, when you put that link on social media on the website, end up attending the event. So we are working on our retention there, but 70% is a good number considering the majority of people sign up at the event rather than online. Alrighty, and this is some feedback and direct quotes. So we've gotten so far. If you could see there, Sophia did an activity on the trailer. What do you do for fun in your neighborhood? And they all wrote an idea, and that is just the simplest activity, but it really does have a big impact, especially in showing pride for your neighborhood and where you live, because you don't really think about what you do for fun in your neighborhood until someone asks you. So that was a great prompt that she did. One of the quotes that Scott actually told us was the top one. I'm going to highlight that one because I think it's super important. A lady named Sue went to our Sandlot movie, and she was from the area before the fire, and then she came back, but she was really bummed, and she wished that all her friends were there at this event because they would really like to see what this town has become since post-fire, which was really touching to see that she's feeling that way, considering she had lived here for years and years before. Also gotten great feedback on how the free events have allowed people to bring all their friends and neighbors, and then just people having a great time, and also just being able to talk about composting, agricultural issues in a laid back setting has been really helpful for some folks. Alrighty, and then here are some of the partner organizations that we are working with so far. There are definitely more to come, but these are just the folks that have submitted applications thus far. So we have a very good amount of people on there. I think even a couple more are not on there because they didn't necessarily have a logo. There are a lot of folks on there, if you could see, all around in the Paradise area, Concal, Yankee Hill, and then Bucre Canyon and Magalia. So we're trying to be sure that events are going to be done in each neighborhood, and these are the folks that are going to help us do that and have the capacity to do that. So those are some amazing partners on there. We even have like a licensed therapist that wants to do groups about mental health and do walks every week. So just so many people from the community are coming in to throw these events, which is really great. And then, so quarter 4 is going to start October 5th or October, and then go until December, the end of December. And basically we have a lot coming for everyone here in the community, from planting days, movie nights, fuel reduction days, concerts. There's more than is even listed on there. I just picked a few of everyone's great ideas. Community walks, I can see that one becoming very popular. Disaster preparedness classes, some really important stuff that are all going to be coming soon. And the way people find this is through the California Volunteers event portal. And basically that link right there will take you to all the events that are happening in the area. And this is going to be utilized when the events are becoming more prominent in quarter 4. We're going to have lots and lots of events. Folks can just go and sign up and scroll and see which ones they want to go to and sign up for them. And then everyone should mark their calendars. We're going to be having our large kickoff bash at Billy Park on September 7th. The team and I have all been working really hard to make this event exciting and get the community excited for the next year and a half. There's going to be a lot of exciting events, and so far we have 10 of our partners signed up to be there as well. So I expect more to sign up, and it's going to be an amazing event, and all of you should definitely come. Do we have any questions?
I just want to add a couple of things. Thank you, by the way. Couple of things. So the governor's office actually sent some representatives to our area to find out some things about how Paradise Ridge, our whole district area, is responding. And some of I was gratified to see some of the DNA from work that's being done, not just by us, but by all the partners up here, carried through in their proposal, our request for proposal. So it was nice to see that. And I think we are lucky that we were one of 9 entities that were awarded this. We were the only special district. Everything else is counties, cities, so large entities that have staff dedicated for outreach and this type of thing. And we were able to assemble our team to do this. Second thing is it was lightning. If you looked at that timeline, that is lightning fast for the state of California to turn around on a grant. And so we've had to approach this not only with a team effort on putting the proposal together, which was very intentional. We needed to have buy-in from our staff because this was going to be a heavy lift for us. But also we had some great ideas and energy that came out of that process. And so everybody, once that day rolled around that we got the funding, we were ready to move forward. You'll see a lot of these events are extensions of what we've done already. So we're kind of moving this way. But I think the exciting thing for us is ability to pull in partners to help pull off some of these events and do outreach. And so that's a kind of unique aspect to this program. In fact, that's an item on tonight to help facilitate us moving forward with that. Yeah, I guess the other thing I wanted to shout out is the number of events. I don't know how it compares to our contemporaries that are doing this, but we're really hitting the ground running. With much smaller population, we're having a lot of participation that some of these larger areas are not having as much as we are. So I think that's a testament to our team that's working on this, doing a great job. And I think it's several things, our volunteer program, events, recreation, and things that we're starting to add have been real important for us to get started on this. So I think Chris would be happy to answer any questions, but I want to give you that background.
I know Al, you went to the CONCAL meeting. Have any of you been to the events quite yet? Any feedback from how it went? Did you do the bingo card? Or you saw the bingo card there at the CONCAL meeting?
You may want to share tonight with everybody as part of your presentation, how long this grant runs till. There's a time frame that you and the volunteers and staff are operating within, and a lot of people in different organizations need to be aware of that because it has a bearing on their plans to when they want to apply and become partners, that type of thing. So.
Yeah, so the quarter 4 deadline is actually today to be a partner. We have to get in our quarterly plans here shortly. So our partners were due today. But the grant itself is running until December of 2025, and we are awarded $750,000. Compared to the other entities, some folks were awarded $250,000, but the ones that were awarded $750,000 that I've seen in comparison are like the city of Cupertino and then the city of Richmond. So really urban places. Yeah.
And just to add to that, that we're doing these quarterly because we have to have them pre-approved from the state. So we can't someone can't say, hey, I want to do an event next week. So we have to kind of have a measured process so we can help them make sure it's going to be in meet the criteria the state that can okay. And they've been our staff's been working hard to work with fine tuning some of the applications to make sure that they're solid. So that's why we're doing that quarterly. So the next quarter, when will that period open on applications and when will it close?
I believe the due date is November 12th. And that would be from January until the end of March. So it goes by a quarterly basis, and that's because we have to do our quarterly reports. And the partners also have to submit their invoices and all of that good stuff. So we can include that in the report. So there's going to be a lot of reporting getting done, especially with the help of the partners as well.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I heard you say that November 12th is going to be the deadline to apply for the first quarter of 2025, right? How did you and the staff come up with the number of days prior to the beginning of a quarter where you come up with when the deadline is for application? Because it sounds like they're not the same. You just said today is the deadline for the fourth quarter of this calendar year. And yet this fourth quarter starts on, correct me if I'm wrong, October 1st, right? So is that the same period of time? Okay, I guess I didn't pick up on it.
No, it's okay. It is the same period of time. It might be, due in the beginning of November. I don't have the exact date, but essentially, we're giving ourselves 2 weeks. Ours is due September 3rd. It was September 1st, and then it got pushed to September 3rd because of the holiday, and that was a weekend. So September 3rd is our due date for our fourth quarter, and that gives us 2 weeks to work with grantees to finalize everything before we submit our quarterly plan.
So I'm thinking when you do this kickoff bash, that you might want to have that laid out for all the attendees to realize how they should best relate to whatever quarter is their target for their event or whatever they want to do. Know all those different deadlines and what's required. You'll have all that in place for them.
We have training that we provide. And so that went into a lot more detail actually than what we did today. So that is recorded and available and team did a good job on kind of laying out some of the information there, but all that's pretty much laid out in the presentation.
Yes, the sub-grantee training goes in depth for them. And yeah, it's very much covered there, but this is just kind of a short and sweet kind of what's going on. Quarter 4, there's going to be a lot of metrics for you guys though, and I'm really excited.
You've done a really great job putting this out to the community and partners, like everybody knows. So, and I totally agree with Dan, like you just hit the ground running. It's a lot of work and you've done a really great job just digging right in. Thank you.
Thank you. I will not take credit for everything. Christy, that lady back there, has helped me so much learn. Same with Dan. And then Sophia and I are working hand in hand on this together as well. So it's definitely a team effort. And then our supervisors as well are kind of overseeing logistics and helping us as well take this running. Thank you.
Another question. Stop. I see the logos and you've indicated that doesn't represent the entirety of the partners. Do you have a list of those?
We have a list of them currently submitted, but we will have a more distinct list so the due date is today. So people are still submitting them. I still had 3 getting submitted.
I asked because I just want to make sure that another organization that I represent is on there.
I don't think I saw a profile submitted for them, but I can double check.
Okay.
I did look back at it today and that's when I uploaded the logo. So but I can double check. If not, we can put
All
it
right.
in.
I don't get too much in the process, but one thing that's been, I think, good approach for us is we've been requesting organization profiles. So that kind of lays out what's the organization, what kind of information could they provide? Are there certain aspects? This has very specific, it's combating loneliness, it's trying to address wildfire safety and, local community safety and so forth. There's a lot of organizations that can contribute to that quite a bit, but they may not have an event. And so that organization profile is important for us because we can do a little bit of matchmaking. So if somebody's doing a certain type of event, just random idea here is that, someone may put on a tour of garden properties. And this, I'm going to steal an idea I heard yesterday. So garden properties, and on those garden properties, they could have local artists or music or that type of thing, right? We heard that yesterday. It was a pretty good idea. So the garden club may not have as much access to someone that may be, the symphony or the band or something, that community band that may have musicians to add to it. So that's some of it for us is going to be some matchmaking. And so if an organization is interested, they're not quite sure what they want to do, encourage them to put in an organizational profile for us.
And that is all mainstream through our website. I didn't want to get into logistical of how everything's being mainstreamed right now, but it's very easy to find for sub-grantees on our website, all mainstream through our website. And then there's different forms for what they're looking for. So the process seems to be working out really good so far as we're getting all those submissions, which when I last checked right before I came to this meeting, we had 33 event proposals for Q4. Some of those include more than 2 or 3 or 4 events in one proposal. So
Are you maxing out how many events, or is there like you're only doing 10 this quarter, or are you just basing it on what you see fit for the grant?
So Christy and Sophia and I, we look at the proposals every week and kind of see what has been coming in. And right now, obviously we have a huge budget, so we're not trying to hold anyone back, but we are being mindful of how much we have to spend per quarter, just so we can have the same amount each quarter until the end of the grant. But we're not trying to say no to anyone. If anything, we'll rework it to work budgetary needs and grant requirements.
And just to mention one other thing, sometimes this grant has very strict restrictions on what you could spend it on. And so sometimes, from some of these nonprofits, they're not used to some of those heavy strings that are attached to it. So we're trying to help them kind of reform the proposal so it matches the goals. Some of those may have to be deferred later because they're just not ready yet. So I think it gives us a good, excellent start of things to consider.
All righty. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Kristen. And that brings us to Susan Dobra with Community Vision Report. Welcome.
There's the button. All right. Hi, I'm Susan Dobra, and I'm here representing an organization, nonprofit organization called Regenerating Paradise. And so I think actually my presentation dovetails very, very, very nicely with the neighbor to neighbor program. So I'm happy to be able to follow that. Regenerating Paradise was formed after, and you can go to the next thanks. Regenerating Paradise is a nonprofit that was formed in the wake of the Camp Fire to try to bring collaborative and regenerative and social and cultural aspects to the rebuild, and particularly regenerative aspects. And we define regenerative as the same way the Center for Regenerative Agriculture at Chico State defines it, which is some of doing things that put resources back into the system rather than depleting them. So as we were approaching the rebuilding this way, we were hoping to, use that as a model so that we would, use local resources, build up the community as opposed to sort of taking things away and, using a lot of outside resources. So we wanted to, share this recovery wisdom, not only within the community, but with other disaster affected communities. And so that sort of defined how Regenerating Paradise evolved. At one point, we started realizing that housing was a real need, affordable housing. And we started to work with a team at UC Davis that was interested in helping us develop a multi-use community here in Paradise, and down on that property that is just below the where the Gold Nugget Museum was. And we spent a couple of years trying to make that happen. As a result of that, and for a number of reasons that didn't come together, and maybe we bit off more than we could chew was part of the problem. But part of what we did with that was we went to North Valley Community Foundation and asked if we could get some funding to do some networking, and take the pulse of the community about whether they wanted this kind of thing, what kind of housing they wanted, what kind of features to such a project would be. Within what the community wanted. That kind of morphed as the housing project faltered. We moved that project into this one, the one that I want to report on you tonight, which is sort of we wanted to do some research into what the future of Paradise could look like, what the people of the Ridge wanted for the future of Paradise. And what it would look like up here in another 50 years. So we did. We started out. You could go to the next one, Scott. So this is the result of that research, and it's a 25-page report that we also have a PDF of that includes all of the data that goes with it, what we did was we did two things. We did surveys in the summer of 2022 and got 226 respondents to that. We gave them out at the party in the park, and we put QR codes around town and stuff. 85% of the respondents were campfire survivors, and 83% were pre-fire residents. You can see that the age groups were kind of evenly divided between the 26 to 40 and the 41 to 60 and the 61 to 80. We didn't get a whole lot of younger or very much older respondents, and we're kind of working on that. We're trying to hope to go to the young people and find out more about what they want for the future of Paradise, because they're the ones that are going to be here. But we also found that we talked to mostly people who were currently living on the Ridge or plan to return. So 75% were currently on the Ridge, 10% more plan to return. So we're really looking at people who have a vested interest in what the future of Paradise is. And you can go on from there. We also believe the community of lead recovery is important for the future, and that was one of the principles that we based this on. What we found was really heartening for us, because the values that came out of, and this is just the survey, the first survey, the survey helped us to, I didn't mention the focus groups. We did a survey in the summer of 2022, and then used that as the basis for a number of focus groups. We did like 8 focus groups in the spring of 2023. Which were smaller groups of about, between 3 and 10 people that gave us more detailed feedback. So this is what we found out. We found out that the people of Paradise really want to live in safety and peace. That's no surprise, right? That was the number one value that came out of the survey process. And that number 2 was that they're really interested in rebuilding the sustainability. And that to us was gratifying, because there's kind of a myth, I think, that people of Paradise aren't interested in, green things and sustainable things and stuff. But the UDA process and our research found that people really are interested in a sustainable future for Paradise. Really are interested in, are concerned about a changing climate. They're concerned about how do we respond to that, and so that in another 10 years, we're not going through the same thing that we just went through with the campfire, because we didn't pay attention to the changing conditions around us. So this list is a list I think that is very. It's very similar to the values that the UDA process found, and so it reiterates that the people of Paradise are interested in and wanting community and connection, and that's why I'm happy to follow the presentation about neighbor to neighbor, because I think that this came up over and over again, that those in the survey and those in the focus group wanted to have a community where there was a lot of connectivity. They wanted to have, that kind of future for this town. So they wanted to keep the small town values, at the same time as moving forward and responding to the changing conditions around us. And then there you can see from the other things, affordability, natural beauty in the outdoors. That was something that came up over and over again. People are here for that, and that's what they want to preserve. Cultural and recreational activities, rebuilding without rush. A lot of people mentioned that they thought, at this point, at this phase of the game, we want to slow down and take our time and decide what we want for the future, and sort of not, kind of slow down the pace of the rebuild so that it wasn't just let's get everything back to where it was, but rather, sort of let's plan for the future and take our time and make it happen the way we want it to happen. People talked about sustainable practices like, here I'll say, they highlight the importance of adopting low water use, rainwater collection, energy efficiency. They want more solar. They want to live in homes that are fire resistant and environmentally friendly. And so, there were a lot of ideas about what living sustainably could mean. And they like the idea of living simply. Self-sufficiency was another value that people talked about, even to the extent that, and I found this one, just the groups of young people that I talked to, they're very interested in energy independence, really interested in, and trying to achieve some kind of energy independence for our community. So that's something to put some thought into. And then healthcare, accessibility in healthcare. A lot of people did mention that they like this community to become more welcoming to people with disabilities and people with, people who have accessibility needs, and that go hand in hand with that is the need for developing our healthcare, which I think we all pretty much agree with. We need to have that. Go ahead on to the next one, Scott. So the focus groups, so that was the survey, okay? And that was 226 people, and we kind of culled all that data. And again, the report in PDF form has all of the data, in the back of the report. So if anybody wanted to sort of say, look and look and see if our interpretation of that, that information was correct, they can just check for themselves. And so that's all included in that. We went on from the survey to use that to form the way that we approach the focus groups. So we found that the focus groups needed sort of more education about what kinds of options were available to them, and so we made a little presentation about those things, and then we talked about what people would want within those different options. So there's a collective belief in the power of rebuilding and the potential to create an even better paradise. I know, and that was a real strong, that clearly came across. People were very committed to making paradise better. They're driven by a sense of community and thinking plans. A few felt that emphasizing gratitude and focusing on our current blessings rather than our past losses will help us as we go along. And then there's a general consensus that rebirth and creating new life with a fresh perspective is vital to our recovery, that we can take this, what we've been through and use it to as an opportunity, to rekindle our sense of community. Go ahead to the next one. the top 5 most frequently mentioned visions for the future. We asked them what they, what they wanted for the future. The top 5 things were number 1, community and connectivity. So I think you're right on the right path with the Neighbor to Neighbor grant. I think that's going to help create that, and I think that's what what people want. And there's a lot of support for putting energy into community and connectivity. The number 2 in order of frequency was sustainability and use of local resources. So, for example, there was a strong, like I said, strong preference for localized energy production, solar and wind energy, energy independence. Some people mentioned using kind of sustainable approaches to remediation from the environment, so things like using fungi to get the toxins out of the ground and things like that. People wanted to talk about drought-resistant native plants and landscaping, and that's an idea that came up over and over again. And they were interested in grant programs for redevelopment that would be would focus on replacing invasive species with native plants. And so that all came out of these conversations that we had in the focus group. They also are interested in economic development and business. So they want to see Paradise grow. We want to see, well, they want to be able to do things up here with their families and kids the number 4 and 5 were housing and urban development and health and well-being. So the focus groups had very, very similar sort of values that came out of that process to the survey. And our little pictures here. Alan Myers, I have to mention, was the founder of Regenerating Paradise. He's now living in Portland, but he grew up in Paradise, and he designed this. I did the text for this after we went through the research, and he designed the booklet. So if you get a chance to look at the PDF, and if you haven't received it, let me know. I'll send it to you. It's really beautifully laid out too, and a kind of really visionary. On to the next. What we did with all this was we sent out this PDF to as many different lists and social media sites, and to as many people on the Ridge as we could possibly manage to do. And we invited everybody to a community vision convening in June, and asked them to what are the implications of this report? Okay, here's what people said they wanted. So what does that make us? What do we want to do now as a result of that? What's the next step? So we had this convening on the 18th at the Table Mountain Masonic Lodge, and about 40 people came, and we had a really nice time. We did a lot of activities, and we sort of did a lot of brainstorming together and some little small group work, and what we found, as you can go to the next one, it was that people had some, these are the big ideas that came out of that process. People want to attract more young families and more diversity to this town with services for everybody. We want to be inclusive and have things for everyone to do. One of the ideas that came out of the process was a community calendar with reminders to people, and the chamber has already followed through on that. So so Monica was there and she heard that, and there was another person there who volunteered to make that happen, and now you probably get that in your email. You can just say, I want to be reminded about this event, and they'll send you an email to remind. So that's a nice thing. Red Robin work days, where people said that people need help with things like brush removal. So there should be days where where we all neighbors get together and help one neighbor, and then the next weekend they help another neighbor, and then the next weekend they help another neighbor, and that this problem of us all having to deal with our fire mitigation issues on our property is one that we should be solving together. So that was a great idea. They talked about e-bikes on the bike path with solar powering stations. That was a great idea. One of the things that I think is also going to come out of the neighbor to neighbor process is this idea of recruiting more folks to service organizations. I think what we're finding, and we're finding this in Regenerating Paradise, and I know that, Campfire Restoration Project and all the small volunteer nonprofits are experiencing a kind of burnout at this point, which is, because we've been sprinting since the fire, right? And so we're all finding that we need to find ways to sort of collaborate and get together. And one of the ways that we can do that is realize that 80% of the, according to the Chamber of Commerce's research, 80% of the new housing in this town is being bought by people who've never lived on the ridge before. To find a way to include those people into what we're doing, in service organizations, and we need to find a way to recruit them to help us with this process of rebuilding this town. So that was a great idea. People want to make sure we incorporate the long-term plan into the town's general plan, that we support and encourage Firewise communities. And I know you're all in favor of that. I just got my community recognized as a Firewise community. So I'm all in favor of that. And to educate and engage the young people of Paradise. For me, that's kind of the next step. We have to find a way to talk to the young people and get them engaged with this rebuilding process, this process of rebuilding the community. And working with the high schools, working with boys and girls clubs, that's I think the door into that. And then people wanted to instigate more solar for energy efficiency and sustainable. And as I said, also wind power was mentioned, and that comes up over and over again. So those are the big ideas. There were a lot of. You can go to the next slide. There were a lot of other great ideas. Just, we need bakeries and walkable downtown, of course, and, diverse restaurants and an indoor pool and health club. Okay, that's your job, right? People wanted, I guess we're missing beyond fitness, right? so we want something more like that. And expert help in eradicating broom. These were all smaller ideas that came out of the process. I think one of the things that we want to do as a result of this research, these findings that we've published in this community vision report, is to take a step back and say, what is the long view now? I mean, I think we've really spent a lot of time, sort of just rebuilding so that people have places to live, and important, like those important things about, like what Rebuild Paradise does, making sure people have the money to deal with their septic or deal with the gravel around, their defensible space. Those things are important. Now I think is an opportunity for us. We're in a new phase of development. We need to take a long view of what do we want the future Paradise to look like, and how can we get from here to there. So that's what this report, I'm hoping, is going to help us do. I hope you get a chance to look at it in full. We didn't print out, the environmental organization, we didn't print out a whole lot of them. We sent them around as PDFs. We didn't want to waste a lot of paper, but we will certainly get you a hard copy if you would like one. And we did give you this 2-page summary of overview of the findings, and I can give them out to people in the audience as well. But that's what we found out. Do you have any questions for me?
Susan, does your organization plan on sharing not only your presentation like you did tonight, but the report itself to Town Council of Paradise, the Board of Supervisors of Butte County, our elected representatives of this area, such as Gallagher at the, in the State Assembly? I think it's worthwhile, quite frankly.
Thank you. And actually, there's one more slide, and that's exactly what it says. Sorry about that. Our next steps are to share this report with the town council and staff. We also are giving it to any developers who come into town, and of course anybody else who wants it. But also taking it to Assemblymember Gallagher and the Board of Supervisors is a great idea too. I think that's we haven't been thinking outside of Paradise, but we should. Thank you. And if anybody wants a copy, just email me at Susan at regeneratingparadise.org. And I can send you a copy of the PDF. And I also wanted to tell you that one of the things that the next project that Regenerating Paradise is doing, sort of in response to this report, is we're collaborating with CHIP. So they're one of the developers that are in town. They're doing the Cypress Gardens project. So we decided, well, if we can't build an affordable housing complex ourselves, what we'll do is work with any developer who comes to town to try to make projects that they are doing more regenerative. So we'll offer them help with community gardens and maybe having a compost site and having hookups and maybe someday even catching water off the tops of their roofs. But we're starting slow, and Chip is doing Cypress Gardens along the banks of what is really one of the tributaries of the headwaters of Dry Creek, and that area, that riparian area, that creekside area needs a lot of work. Right now it's overgrown, and what we're doing is we're hoping Chip to first of all do fire mitigation, clear out the brush, then also to try to plant native plants along the creek to restore it that way, to make it more fire safe and also make it a place where people can walk. So eventually there'll be a walking path, a gravel walking path around it and stuff. And we're inviting, we're trying, and we'll probably be applying for the retirement funding to invite volunteers to help us with that process. We have our first event on October 10th with Wells Fargo is giving us a bunch of volunteers to get started on it. So that's kind of how, what we're wanting to do for the future. And our new motto, I have to tell you, I heard this on a webinar by a Borders Without Borders guy. And he said, if it's not fun, it's not sustainable. And I said, wow, that's a great motto for us. We should make that our motto. So, and if it's well with Paradise Recreation and Parks District work, right? If it's not fun, it's not sustainable. So let's make it fun.
I just want to say Saturday I went to the UDA thing in the park, and the slide before this on that list of the little things, that those were all things on as choices. You could put your red or green stickers for the walkable downtown. So there's definitely connections between the UDA and this Regenerating Paradise findings, which is great.
Yeah, really nice. I gave a copy of this to Barry Long.
Did you?
I did. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Susan.
And that brings us to public comment. Does anyone have anything to say on an issue that is not on the agenda tonight?
I do. So in lieu of a liaison report, I wanted to mention that the town council made a decision yesterday which will negatively impact recreation on the ridge. With regard to the Pence Road intersection, they chose not to use the roundabout alternative, which would have a higher benefit to cost ratio, and instead to try to put in a red light with red and green arrows at the top of Pence Road, without in any way considering the impact that would have on the Yellowstone Kelly Trail. They treat it as a 4-way intersection when it's really a 5-way intersection. None of their analysis considered the impacts, one, on limiting the ability of bicyclists to eventually continue up from Paradise towards Magalia to connect with the future trails coming up from Magalia Dam, or also the impacts that would be from if there has to be a beg button or walking through crosswalks or whatever you're going to do with your bicycle to get it past that intersection, the impact that would have on drivers. So I believe that this was an ill-considered decision. I just wanted to let the district know that that both the district and the county have plans to build a non-motorized connection up to Magalia Reservoir from town. And if the town decides to continue with the red light rather than the previously intended roundabout, that will interfere with those plans. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Thank you, Ms. Stonebreaker. And that brings us to the consent agenda.
I'd like to pull the 3.1 and 3.4, please.
Make a motion to approve 3.2 and 3.3 on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Director Alma Green. Director Mary Belfay. Secretary Steve Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland.
Aye.
Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes. Going right into item 3.1. On the minutes of July. Sorry. So on the top part on 3.1, no, sorry. In the motion, I put that there was an item 3.4 from the past consent agenda, and there was not. There was only 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3. So I took that from the motion. And then I mentioned that I made corrections I only made corrections to the July 12th meeting, but the motion should have contained also the special meeting because that was the same item, but there wasn't.
So confusing us when you say July 12th, I think you want to do it June 12th.
June 12th, yes.
Because this is the July
Yes,
10th
June.
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry, I only mentioned the June 12th in the motion and the minutes for that last meeting, but June 27th should have been part of that.
And just to clarify, on the agenda from July 10th, it does show both dates. So it does show the regular meeting of the June 12th, and it shows a special meeting of the June 27th. So this is just making it consistent with the agenda. So
yes. And then I also think that was it for the minutes. Yeah. Oh, I can't see that far. I don't have my glasses on today. And then also on the consent agenda 3.4 in regards to the safety committee minutes of July 18th, I accidentally spelled Jeff Daly's name wrong in the attendees. And then I put the word, or I guess PAU instead of pay on one of the items, and there was a unneeded semicolon.
Can we get a motion?
Accept the, excuse me, I move that the board accepts consent agenda item 3.1, board minutes of the regular meeting of July 10th, 2024, and also item 3.4, the safety committee minutes of their meeting of July 18th, as corrected by our clerk.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call vote?
Director Alma Green.
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay.
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland.
Aye.
And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
And that brings us to old business.
Mr. Chair, just a friendly agenda order request. We have Nick Trover, which is item 6.1, and I'd request that we take item 6.1 prior to old business with concurrence with the board.
Sounds good to me. Let's move to 6.1.
Thank you. So we have item 6.1, and by the way, this is page 11 in the report. Oh, I'm sorry. It is. Let me get the right page here. Page 20 has a report in here. So as board knows, next few years, really kicking off next year, we have a whole host of construction projects and new facilities that are coming online. A lot of that's in planning phase right now, although some of it may be kicking off here very shortly this fall, and then continued on through 2028. So to help us with this good problem to have, it has become really apparent for us to add some additional help. And so we've done that on the grant management side of stuff with Arbuckle Consulting. We have a good team in place on a lot of our projects, but we need someone to serve as liaison, kind of picking up some of the pieces that might be necessary that would normally be for a larger district. They would have a facilities development person that would do this. We don't have that role. So we did a bit of a search, kind of Northern California, and got quite a few positive recommendations about Trover Construction Project Management. And I'll let Nick talk a little bit about his history. We've checked references, very, in some cases, almost eerily too positive. Yeah, I called everybody on the list. So, but just to go through this, and then we'll let Nick have at it. But the idea is that we would have a not to exceed amount, a very modest amount, 30,000. What that is the idea for us to see how it's working out. And then we come back to the board. We can give an update on how progress is and kind of next steps. We are proposing this as a master services agreement. So the agreement, which we've been working very diligently with our lawyer last few months here on getting some standard agreements, but this would allow kind of an umbrella agreement, if you will. And so on each particular task that may come up, that we would identify, he would give us a scope for that task related to, let's say, for example, a construction project that we have. He would list out the duties, a not to exceed amount or budget for it. And then we would provide approval agreement on it and then go from there. So it'd be kind of an overall, and we've done this before with the organization, but an overall approach. And then each project would have kind of its own scope of work and a not to exceed budget on that. But when we hit that limit, or actually probably anticipating hitting that limit, we'll come back to the board, we'll report back how the relationship is going, how the projects are going. And I think gives us a good way to get some work done, but also gives some oversight and insight from the board to look at this. There is a list of some of the services that are listed. And I think it makes sense unless the board had questions for me, and you could ask them later as well, but to go through some of the services and background from Mr. Trover.
Sure. So I'm Nick Trover Construction Project Management. I've personally been in construction for over 20 years in various phases, pretty much most of the time in project management or owner's representation. Projects varying in size from, $10,000, $20,000 to $250 million. About 8 years ago, started my own business. I also have another business associate that I think is watching me right now and probably judging my COVID weight. But we work pretty much exclusively with governmental and quasi-governmental agencies, so nonprofits, districts like yourself, charter schools, community colleges. We act as an owner's representative liaison, kind of acting in between architects, contractors, permitting agencies such as the county, city, DSA, whatever your jurisdiction is, and help guide that process and make sure that the owner's interests are aligned. We don't do just construction management. We do project management from inception. So we'll have clients come to us, say like a charter school, say we're outgrowing our area. So we're actually working with Children's Community Charter School here in Paradise as well. Like we're growing out of our area. We need more room. We don't know how to do that. How do we find funding? How do we do permitting? How do we budget this? What kind of procurement do we want to do? How do we hire a contractor, architect, and then walk them through the whole process of developing the project and then doing the construction management. I've been doing it successfully for about almost a decade now, and sounds like we have very good reviews. So, and I didn't even tell anybody you were going to be calling, so that's good to know. So it's kind of a bit of a background on us. We're here to do as much or as little as you need, and we'd love to help out the local area. Both my business associate Derek and I have roots in Paradise, so it'd be great to have another project up here.
Can you define your roots in Paradise for us so we'd have a feel for that?
Yeah, my grandma lived in Paradise from the late 60s until she passed away about a decade ago now, but spent a lot of time here. I'm a Chico local, born and raised in Chico, so spent a lot of time in Paradise. Derek's family has a lot more history, but I don't know if he's on right now watching, but his family, I think, actually had some what was that? Oh, he's there. Oh, he might want to chime in, but I think his family actually had some relationship with the district at one point. I think part of his family worked here at one point, but I think he's retired now, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
So the only question I had when I read this was, the, like the district manager alluded to, the modest amount of money, because I'm a construction work contractor's wife, and a project management cost of that amount of money can go through in about 3 days. So, so I'm concerned, I know there's a lot of construction projects that the district has coming up between now and 2018. And so how many times are we going to renew that $30,000, or will that be determined at the end of the first or second, whatever is tied into this $30,000, and then the district will look at it again and go.
So I think what Dan and I talked about is that, we need to kind of get a feel of where you're at. What do you need? What services do we need to provide?
Mhm.
And it's hard to define that right now. I mean, I could throw out any number basically and try to work back into it, but I'd rather try to understand what your needs are and then be able to come up with, for this project, you're looking at probably about this much, or, let's get through the first phase. So let me back up a little bit. Typically what we like to do is try to define a project at the beginning where we're trying to see what that looks like. How big is this going to be? What's the dollar amount? What's the scope? How much is this going to require of us? Then once we get to that point, we can put together a more detailed estimate of what our costs will be. Every
Okay.
project's different. So
Right.
some might, require a lot of oversight, and some might require a lot less. It just, at this point, we don't know enough about what your needs are to define that.
So that first chunk of money is going to be spent on like assessing where we're at, what we need, and prioritization and all that.
And probably some project, there would be project management in that as well, like
Right.
getting projects going, understanding where they're at.
Right.
So it's not just deciding how much we're going to charge you. We're not going to charge you to determine how much we're going to charge you.
Right.
Let me add something to that, because I think that's the goal, is that, look, we want to have there are a few things that I think coming up that are good little tests for us. So, recently we worked through some of the aquatic rec center. It's mostly turnkey, and yet there are going to be questions that arise, permit issues, that type of thing, that having a liaison that can look for district needs and review some of the materials that are coming out of the contractor will be very helpful for us, because we just don't have that time. And I think the other idea is to so actually have some on the ground, so to speak, work, but also kind of sizing up some of these other things. Typically, if the district had, I think some of the clients alluded to this, had a project that was well scoped and knew what the role would be. That's not the case for us, because we have about a dozen of these things rolling through, and some of them are going to be kind of variable needs where we may need some help. And it gives us a chance to kind of, see what those are, especially on the bigger projects. So we're if all goes well, we will come back to the board with an authorization and probably a little bit further description of how things have gone. What are the next set of roles and so forth. So I think that's a kind of stepwise approach, rather than, putting a large dollar amount and then telling the board later how it went. So I think it's a good chance for oversight. I suspect some of this maybe come into our Rec and Park Committee, for just kind of updates there. So
That
there's
was going to be my next question. I see the Rec and Park Committee instrumental with this process if we bring Trevor's firm on board. I really do. So glad you said that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And as you probably are aware, some of these projects can take years to develop. So it's really hard to define what our involvement will be for the project development side. Sometimes we can get a project off the ground in weeks or months. Sometimes it takes years. So that first phase is difficult to define. Once we get into construction, we've got construction drawings, we're like going out to bid. We can kind of determine, hey, we need to be on site 2 days a week, or we need to be on site every day a week, for how much time. And it's easier to come up with budgets at that point. But the project development portion is really difficult to pin down.
Question probably for both of you. Would you anticipate that the money we spend here could be a net cost savings, both in terms of freeing up staff time, but eliminating redundancies and potential change orders and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, that's frankly what what we're facing right now, because we have a lot of duty. I mean, you mentioned just one program tonight. That's a pretty involved program, but we have several things going on right now. There's some opportunity costs loss for us when we're pulled into some things, and there's other parts of the organization that need tending. I think you're hitting right on the head. We want to make sure that we are being frugal and careful with how these funds are spent. At the same time, we have limited time. So what that might mean is project gets stretched out rather than having a liaison that says, look, here's 3 questions that the project development team need to move forward. So I think you're capturing it pretty well, the essence of what we're trying to free up. Thank you.
I'd like to soften some input. If in the event the board authorizes any district manager to develop and complete an agreement with Trevor's firm, once that agreement is finalized and consummated, I think the board should receive a copy of it, just so we're familiar with it at a later date.
Yeah, just a couple of things. So this master services agreement that we've developed with the attorney, I think is going to show up actually probably next month. We're going to have one that will come up and it will be in the packet. So that'll give you opportunity to send it. And certainly I think that material here that's on the bottom of page 20 that lists out some of the primary responsibilities, that'll appear in this general scope of type of services. And then we'll have, I would be happy to share with you guys or directors, I shouldn't say you guys, the particular scopes that come through. And that may be good to go through with Rec and Park Committee just to see how the process goes. And so people are comfortable with it. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public input?
I agree that this will be efficient for the district, that this district has limited capacity and it doesn't have this particular specialization. So I agree that a specialist would be warranted for all the construction projects upcoming.
Thank you. Anyone online? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the board authorize the district manager to develop and complete an agreement and subsequent scope of work for projects with Trevor Construction Property Management.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, we get a roll call vote.
Director Alma Green. Director Mary Belfay.
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland.
Aye.
And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
Thank you. That brings us back to old business, the purchase of Butte County tax defaulted properties. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have, and this is page 11, I believe, that starts the report for it. And we do have a couple of changes. There are some typos in here. We have, just to get through these pretty quickly here. So we have a sentence in the end of the first paragraph on page 11, background. Additional properties removed from consideration as they were paid off. The taxes were paid off, should be added to that. Just to note that this has been discussed several times. We talk about some of the work and the initial objection letter that was presented to the board way back in 21. And that was, but we also had a discussion during closed session on the July 10th meeting. And by the way, I just wanted to point out, we mentioned Chapter 8, but that's Chapter 8 of the California Revenue and Taxation Code. If you want to read code in the middle of the night as a sleep aid, that is available there. There is a rather good document that lays out this process a little simpler. We have a flow chart that's really fuzzy in here, not very readable, but we do have available that overall guidelines that flow chart comes from, and Sunny can share that with board members or the link on that. Okay, just going through this, we had additional properties. At one point, we're looking at 4 properties. I'm going to share, see if I can share the screen here. Give you a sense of the overall location, and this is going to be tough because it's kind of bookends of where it is. Hold on just a second. I'll see if we'll bring it over. Apologies, it's not easy to navigate the small screen. Okay, so there's a portion, this dotted line are Town of Paradise boundaries. You can see that these properties, just give you a sense of it. Here's Skyway over here. This is the top of Nance Canyon, which is another typo in the report. The property profiles says Butte Creek Canyon, should be Upper Nance Canyon. Indian Springs Road is near here. And I'm blanking on the other road that's over there. Sunny Red Sky. Yeah, so actually access is probably a little easier from Red Sky from Red Sky on this. Over here is the really teeny tiny property. I'll zoom in a little bit, but gives you a sense as to the location. It is abutting BLM property, or excuse me, a state of California property, I think in this section here. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It is BLM. State of California starts down here. So there's public land without really good public access to it currently right now. A couple of things I think are pertinent on this. I'll start on this property first and then mention a couple of things on the other is hold on, I'm gonna single task for a moment here. So I think it was in motion quite a bit of time before that, but in 2005, our district actually had a letter of concern sent to the planning department. This is the area, if folks may remember it, Eagle Meadows subdivision. It is really hard to see on here, and it just disappeared from your screen, Scott. Did I lose this share? Okay. So I'll give you trying to help. Yeah, it's hard. So I'll zoom in a little bit. Uh-oh, this is kind of a fun game of ping pong. So I do a red dot around here. It's going to take a minute to catch up on Scott's screen here, but this is the property. I put a red outline around it. All of this that you're seeing here with the dark line around it is this Eagle Meadows subdivision, which from a 2024 perspective has quite a bit of issues, I would say, from a fire protection standpoint. The protest or the letter, concerning letter that my predecessor, Mike Trinkus, had sent was concerned about availability of parks in the area, and then kind of just open space and deer herd access. And they did create a corridor through here. There were some areas that were set aside as open space in here. Nothing really on the edge except what they called phase 7. Phase 7 to me does not sound like it's a park. So even though that's a part of the Deer Creek or deer migration corridor that they had. This property allows us for a tow hole. That tentative subdivision map actually has been extended. It still applies, believe it or not, till 2025. Sonny can give some details on that. So I think that is something that by itself, a very small parcel, and yet if there's future development there of any kind, it does give us potential access for people to get to, and it would be a challenge to get down there, but to get down towards the BLM property from lands that are up on top, so to speak. So, I think it could link in with additional lands that may be part of either future subdivisions or part of anything that comes out of the buffer project if that moves forward. So I just want to give a little context on that. There were, and I'm blanking on the number, there were several thousand properties that were on that tax list. And we did a bit of a screening on that, first within the district, and then started a sorting process on if lands were within a kind of landlocked within a residential neighborhood that had no interest to us. Areas that were either next to open space that was either owned or current open space that would be difficult to develop in the future. Those seem like areas for potential interest. And so that's why we settled on those 4 properties out of, I think it was 4,700 that was there originally. Don't hold me to that number. Let me give you a little bit of zoomed in look, and that might help a little bit too. Sorry, part of the thing here that my screen ping pongs when I shift to looking for sharing. It jumps between screens, so it takes a minute. Okay, so this gives a little bit a better view of the so-called Indian Springs property. This is Skyway here. If you look across the canyon, you can see part of this from here. There is, and I mentioned this, I think in our Rec and Park Committee meeting from way back, but there is the Nance Canyon is part of potential future development, the Everybody Healthy Body development that was essentially off south of Butte Creek. And they were looking at maybe developing a sports complex there. There was, I don't know what the status of it is, and I don't know if Sonny was able to chase down additional information, but at one point plans to submit, they're doing some planning efforts right now. I don't think a tentative subdivision map has been submitted at all. I don't think they're in the process. But one of the concepts that we've heard is that Nance Canyon would be set aside as open space. Most of that is within our district. Yet if that was created, any future development, there wouldn't really be easy access from Paradise to that. You'd have to drive down to Chico to access the properties that they're talking about right now. So, both of these are, there's some speculation on there as far as like what they serve as a park function. We have, on the other hand, we have very strong interest from Butte County Fire Safe Council. These fit within their profile. These are within their what they're calling their south boundary. Maybe somebody remembers it. South Paradise VMP. Thank you, Mr. Stonebreaker. So they have Sequin there. They have properties that are signing up. This fits within that profile. They had talked a little bit about it, and it's speculative right now, but trying to get some alternative. These could be as demonstration sites. So this one in particular is fairly close to lands that are currently grazed by cattle. So that could be extended, another tool that could be used in there. They had several ideas and offers of support. I think a question for us is going to be the long-term maintenance and then trying to establish that. But the short term, it looks promising what we may have opportunities to partner with Fire Safe Council and use it potentially as maybe even a staging area for grazing in here. This is the area on Skyway. Everyone has seen the goats out in kind of that neighborhood there. This may give another opportunity for access for those shepherds. Let me show you one other map if I can. Did that kick in as a share? No, it did not. I was trying to be fancy. Oh, is it going to do it? Yeah, it doesn't quite like it. I thought, oh, almost. Never mind. I'm gonna stop sharing and do it again. So, I got it over here. It was the one on the east side, Pence Road one. Okay. Thanks for your patience. This gives a little better view. This is that Eagle Meadows property, owned property here. This is the BLM land. You can see it shares that border. If you look in a bit closer, you can see the Upper Miocene Canal. So just off the property, there is a couple of breaks that show up on here that are accessible. This is relatively steep country in here, but certainly I was able to walk down it the day I visited a couple years ago. It may not be that way today because of the overgrown brush. Anyway, this gives you a sense of it as to its location and at least a chunk of the public property that's right next door to it.
Is that the one that's kind of sort of accessible from Lago Vista?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. And there is a low inset here. I don't know if you can see it on the bottom, but you can at least see the kind of like the triangle of paradise. And so it's
Right.
almost at the apex or the base of it here.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Sonny has information on it. I have some information. I'm sure you guys may have some questions. One of the things I think arises is long-term disposition of property. So if, for whatever reason, it doesn't work out for us, there's a process we would go through the same sort of similar process as what we're doing tonight, which it would first be offered to public agencies. In some cases, I think with this being next door to BLM, they have their own challenges. They're probably looking for folks to, and locally anyway, to help and partner and manage. But at the same time, they are looking at places to add access to. So, that may be of interest to them. And so if at any later date, it doesn't meet district needs, these can be subject to a public auction process. And right now, and it may have been adjusted a little bit with some of the fees, but the the second page of the report, I'm on page 12, by the way, has a nice table that Sonny put together. It has the APNs, location, acreage, so it gives you a handle and some of that location, the purchase amount, and then what they're appraised at. So if you look at that, and Scott, maybe you can, I'm going to stop sharing. I don't know if you could get to that part of the report to share it. It's just the regular packet. Look at page 12, top of page 12 as a table. Anyway, it had the purchase amount, appraisal, and then the appraisal date, which is kind of dated right now. But you could, if the point is simply to see what the spread is on purchase price to what its value is, there's a rather wide spread in there. So, Sonny, I don't know if I missed any. Oh, talk about due diligence for us.
When we originally were interested in the properties in 2021, we went through the due diligence on all of them. I think we ended up with 3 at the time, and we're down to 2. So should be in the property briefing for both of them. The title reports, the phase 1s, and the appraisals were done for both. And I see that needs updating. Did you have any specific questions?
Just maybe run through what we typically do for our due diligence, the documents and the steps we do.
So we get an appraisal through an appraiser, and see if they have availability and get that done. Title reports, usually through Mid-Valley Title. And then the phase 1 environmental report, we get that done to check the land for any issues. So, yeah.
Who in terms of staff or Park and Rec Committee have walked these properties?
So we had a couple of in our previous Rec and Park Committee provided directions to it. We had a drone flight over each of these properties, which was helpful, that we shared at the time. And this is circa 2021, maybe 22. And maybe our committee members from the Rec and Park Committee at the time remember that. It was there's challenging access to it. That's another thing that we'll have to rectify over time. At the same time, there's a lot of properties, parks start off with, they have challenging access until they get access to it. So, I think the one on Indian Springs is easier to get to, as it has kind of road access to a gate. The other one has road access, but it's cross additional properties next door. So there may not be as friendly access to it, because it is gated in there. But it does have road access to it, and we can show that on the map. By the way, one other thing I was going to point out was I did reach out. This is a committee had suggested this, to reach out to the county and see, hey, why the delay? We started this protest process in 2021, and here we are quite considerably down the road. They've actually gone through another cycle. So there was one thing that I'll just kind of summarize some of the points that Troy Kidd, a treasurer tax collector from Butte County, provided. And he said this was the first time in 5 years that the tax collector's office had submitted properties for auction through this what's called Chapter 7. That's the public auction property tax sale. He runs through our express and interest. They had to run through all the properties were in trust or in probate. So there was a process the county had to do. They had to do work with the public guardian to conduct an investigation. One of the properties that board members may recall, there was 173 acres that were prime recreation property down in Butte Creek Canyon, had Rick Creek access, had access to PG&E lands, and so forth. And that was purchased through a private party that found the error, paid for the taxes, cleaned up some of the tax issues, and then had secured it as private property. They mentioned their new ERP system. I'm not sure what that is. I think that's related to their tax collection software. And so there was just expressed that time pass. They're now moving on to a new sales cycle in 2024. And so we actually had to submit a new protest letter, and it essentially started the process again. So anyway, sorry about that long list, but that was something that the board had requested information about why it takes so long to work through the county. Happy to answer any questions.
In the staff report that you provided to us, on the second page of that staff report, under that beautiful table that Sunny designed, there's a statement that says additional funds may be required to close the properties and complete the transactions. Do you have any idea of an approximate estimate what those additional funds may equate to?
Yeah, I think it'd be related to anything that may be related to kind of closing costs. So we're talking about probably on the order of perhaps $1,000 or $2,000 at most.
Thank you. So I needed to know that. Also,
all in comparison to the rest.
Right. Also, in the staff, you didn't present this verbally, but for the benefit of the audience here, the Butte County Fire Safe Council, the relationship with them and us as pertains to these two properties. Can you share that a little bit? It sounds like.
Sure. Yeah. So, we have good partnership with them. A lot of information exchanges back and forth on some of our efforts. And then certainly they've helped us out with properties. We're trying to get a number on this, but some of their grants extended on our properties have been on the order of probably $2 million worth of value on projects that they've run on Koodalink especially, but also other properties that we have. So they've been a very strong, easy to work with partner on it. A lot of their work requires a CEQA to get it started, and they're working through that process. This South Paradise VMP is an area that they have CEQA clearance for. They have grants they're working through. I wanted to make sure that did this fit within their project area so that they could do short-term work. A lot of our projects can be added long-term, but I want to make sure if they had the funding and availability, could they do it, within the next cycle here if they had funds. They expressed pretty strong interest in this because there's not a lot of publicly owned parcels on that southern part of Paradise. There's not good access to some of these areas. And so some of it, I think from their standpoint, is they want to have some home bases where they can have access. And we've been beneficiaries of sometimes with some of the great goat grazing where they're doing work in the area and they need a place to park the animals for a day or two until it can go to the next, transport to the next site. And we've been accommodating on that, which means that we've gotten a lot of benefit from that because we get grazing on some of those land, or browsing, if you want to be technical about it, with goats. In either case, I wanted to include that statement here. It wasn't early enough to say anything at our last meeting, but they do have a quote in here that Director McGrean mentioned. Both properties offer unique opportunity to provide demonstration sites and recreation access. One of the properties is situated in the South Paradise Vegetation Management Program overseen by CAL FIRE, which will offer a unique opportunity to showcase the benefits of vegetation management, including prescribed fire over the years to come. So anyway, I wanted to include that quote because I think it shows their interest and importance from their work.
When I tried to find these properties, I got to a gate on the Nance Canyon.
That gate's the property.
It says it's unfenced.
Oh, no, there's a gate.
Just a gate.
Yeah. It's not cross fence.
I don't see any recreational park possibilities there. There's no population down there for one, very little. And I couldn't find the other one and got berated by a neighbor when I came out of the road because I drove to it, or tried to drive to it, and the road didn't match the map. So boots on the ground, I couldn't tell where the property was. But the road was bare dirt.
Yeah.
But the neighbor, I stopped and let him take a picture of my license plate. And because if a fire was going to start, he was going to know who started it. But I've been a firefighter for a long time. I know not to park my car in the weeds and stuff. But I couldn't find that one, and I can't see any recreational or park possibilities there either. Does the Fire Safe Council purchase property?
Yeah, they don't. But I think that one of the things in conversation right now is this long-term view of some of these areas being operated by a joint powers authority. So in which case there would be a combination of jurisdictions that would combine or create a new agency that could do the fire protection stuff. So, we may be a temporary landholder if that happens. And then, I think that the other part of that is kind of the idea of if that falls through, we go through that Chapter 7 process and sell the properties. So they'd be sold at auction. So I think there's, from a flipping standpoint, and you don't usually get what the appraised value is, but there's some value that could be netted by the district, and that's not why we're buying it. I might disagree with the recreation part, just because if additional properties are added, it then becomes kind of a viable area. 5 acres is pretty small for park. 5 acres, it has maybe, I won't speculate, but a fraction of it is flat, and then it drops down towards West Branch the Feather. By itself is tough, but if you start linking it together with that, whatever they call the phase 7 area, if that was a park, then all of a sudden it becomes, I think, viable and maybe a toehold on that. So there's some speculation, I would say, on that aspect of it. But, I think some of these are definitely looking what happens at the future.
Well, I couldn't find the one property, but we wouldn't have to maintain it because there's nothing out there. The other one, there are some residences that we would have to give them their 100-foot clearance for sure. So that's an added cost.
Yeah, I've talked to one of the landowners out there that has grazing animals, and they seem receptive to potentially they would run animals out there. So we'd have to work out those details, but there's somebody close by that might be interested in kind of doing some of that work, running some goats out there.
I've had to think about this one a lot because I don't think that the maybe end goal is recreational purpose. That might be a side benefit. Because what's happening with insurance is so bad in our community that something has to be done, even if it's a small start. And nobody else, no other district is doing anything like this. And no entity in our community is trying to think outside the box with doing something like this. So, worst case, we have to sell it, but we have to try to do something to maintain those really high risk areas. Somebody's got to do something.
And let me add something to that. Thank you for that. The idea is we're a bit premature on this from the fire protection buffer standpoint. So working through those studies right now, these are going to show up as areas of importance to the community. We certainly saw from the recent park fire how a scenario is not that far fetched from a fire start in 99, having a similar outcome coming upslope and quick spread over grassland and climbing upslope. So I think that's one of the areas that is a high priority for Butte Fire Safe Council. And I wish I had the little miniature time machine that could say, look, if this was the first of properties that were well funded for fire protection, acquisition, or easements, and kind of linking them together with a management plan that came from FEMA or CAL FIRE sources, and then had a long-term funding mechanism, which I think is going to be important on any of those things. This fits in pretty easily with that, but it's a bit premature. I mean, trying to be careful scientist on it to not oversell it, because we're still going through that process, still going through the information. Even if it shows benefits, there's no guarantee of funding from those sources. And so this is an opportunity that seems pretty low risk because it does have that public auction. We're not locked in. We go through that public auction and actually may gain some public or some benefits, financial benefits from selling that property, or it fits into a long-term plan that protects the community and perhaps allows for future development and rebuilding up here, because that insurance cost is going to be so prohibitive unless, as Director Goodland says, we do something. So, like I said, I don't want to oversell that part because it is speculative, but I think there's kind of a low risk for us because there's a small, I think, exposure for us on if we decide to sell it in the future.
Ms. Chair, I'll save my comments for after we hear from the audience, and then I'll share. I have some comments, but I'd like to bring them forward to the board after we hear from the audience. Okay.
Do we have public comment?
Yes, you do. So the report mentions that the district told the tax collector that this would have to go to the Recreation and Park Committee before it came to the board, but I don't believe that's actually happened since May of 2024. It would have been interesting to have an opportunity to give comment at the committee level and also to see all of the due diligence, including the quite questionable appraisals. So it's was point out one of those documents says that the property touches the Miocene. Apparently, it indeed does not. The maps certainly don't show that it does. And I wanted to call out something that occurred at the town council meeting yesterday, where an item similar to this was taken off of the consent, where they were going to purchase completely usable parcels at the corner of Black Olive and First Street, and two of the council members objected to this purchase because it had no immediate benefit to the town. It was just going to be a maintenance burden. And I think that these properties are even more so going to be a maintenance burden. It doesn't really matter if there's no houses within 100 feet. The county chapter 38A still requires at least the perimeter of all of these parcels to be maintained in perpetuity. And I also wonder if there's any insurance issues as the district continues to acquire parcels that have no recreational value. Are there liability issues if unmaintained or scarcely maintained properties that are owned by the district are attempted to be used? Somebody attempts to go down this 50% slope to get to West Feather and falls and breaks an ankle or something like that. I don't know if that's been considered, and it certainly should be. Also, last night, Scott Huber repeatedly informed the council that they couldn't just sell these properties. I don't know exactly how intricate this Chapter 7 process might be, but it's not trivial to unload the district's burden in these cases. Another issue that I brought up previously with regards to the McNally potential acquisition is that attempting to use unincorporated area impact fees for a property like this, which really is not a recreational property, is an inappropriate use of those funds and will not serve the district well in your potential nexus study attempting to increase those impact fees. That if what actually happens is that fees paid by builders or homeowners that are intended to be used for parks are used for this purpose, which is really outside the district's scope, that will not encourage the potential increase in those square footage fees. I did want to say, for those of you who are not present at the Fire Safe Council meeting last week, Taylor was quite chastened by what had happened on some of the properties that they had done extensive work on going up towards Cohasset. And if you intensively maintained 35 acres of sharp canyon land in, say, Sheep Hollow or Cabin Hollow, that would have had negligible impact, very expensive work for negligible impact. And I think that really all needs to be recalculated in regards to what's just occurred. So I believe that there is a significant opportunity cost if the district is going to divert staff maintenance hours to properties like this that have negligible recreational benefit. There's not, it says in there that this meets the district goals of, underserved neighborhood park access, but there's no underserved neighborhood, especially over at Lago Vista that never got built out. And there's not much over there on Red Sky either. So there are areas where we do have underserved populations that could really use those little foothold properties, like to get down to Little Butte from the Fairhaven side. That would be fantastic. But the district isn't interested in that. So I really think that the district in its property acquisition needs to be focused on the recreational possibilities and not so much focused on this potential wildfire risk reduction, which is really outside the district's purview. So I am not in favor of either of these acquisitions, especially not if unincorporated area impact fees would be consumed. One other note from last night, that one of the council members' objections was that this was going to be taking property off of the tax rolls. And I know that the district receives only between 6 and 7% of the tax increment, but if somebody was to actually pay $94,000 for this postage stamp of usable land diving down into the canyon, then there would be a tax bill of, $900 and some dollars, and the district would get $60, but that's $60 a year that you would not be getting, and it would be many thousands of dollars a year that you would be spending instead. Maybe you can get the Fire Safe Council to subsidize some of that for the time being, but I don't believe this is an appropriate use of district resources.
Thank you, Mr. Stoneberger. And I agree with Jen that we need to do things, but I don't think that our funds are what need to be doing them. The taxpayers pay for recreation and park from this board, from this.
One
district.
thing, just I was going to mention something about historical. Open space was part of our original name. So our district originally had, when it was incorporated, open space as part of the mission of the district. Open space is important for a lot of communities, may not have the feet, but it has eyeballs, has long-term importance on it. One thing that may happen, conceivably, may not be, but if that buffer project goes through, that would be, we are obligated as district or whatever entity purchases the funds to do fair market value appraisal. In which case it would go from, at least an order of magnitude and a half from the costs in here now. So there is kind of that opportunity that we have now on that. Yeah, and I think it fits within that network. Actually, I'm questioning the interpretation. There was quite a bit of work in the Cohasset area that reduced. In fact, they're referring to it as an island, even though it was very modest work that happened up there that reduced some of the losses that could have happened in Cohasset from prescribed fire and fuels reduction projects that occurred up there. So there is, I think, some value on being able to access areas that are rugged, tough, and certainly ridges and roads are going to be the place that, from a firefighter standpoint, are important. These are both ridges. So there is a small incremental value in that, perhaps bigger multiplied if it's added in the future.
So Dan, in your staff report under the topic of fiscal impact, you provided a sentence that says the amounts for these acquisitions fall within the amounts authorized in our fiscal year budget for this current fiscal year. That's fine, but having hearing testimony tonight, can you tell us specifically what's the source of those funds if we were to authorize acquisition tonight? I don't believe we're going to be using impact fees.
Well, within our budget, our budget authorizes use of funds, which includes impact fees.
Potentially.
But it gives us kind of a menu of options for us to do acquisitions. So we do have within there, we have a reserve fund. We have impact funds that are available. One thing to consider, we have, small amounts in our impact fees. They're not subject to the same sort of interest and return that we get with our reserves. So in some sense, the district has a certain amount of assets and funds that are available. Some of them are receiving interest, at least right now. And some of them are not, or minimal interest. Our impact fees are held with the county. And so we get a fraction of their return on that.
Well, here's my comments. It seems to me we've started this process sporadically almost 3 years now. And it's not like there's been any change in the makeup of this board and our key staff members. So we've had a familiarity with these properties off and on for some time. I agree with some of the other comments I've heard tonight. I really don't see an immediate potential of recreational accessibility, and I don't see these properties as prime candidates to serve underrepresented neighborhood park access. But I do see them as potential properties that may or may not be germane to this ongoing buffer project, or we're still waiting for the feasibility of that, the outcome of that. If we were to acquire these properties through this process, our staff, our general manager has told us that's true. If we find out they don't fit among those properties that are identified as crucial via the buffer project, then that's our immediate green light, you might say, for us to offer these properties first right of refusal to other public agencies and the like, and then after running through that process, possibly sell them. That's why I look at it. On a bigger issue is, here's where I'm going. We have acquired some properties occasionally through other means, not just purchase outright through tax defaulted properties, but we've purchased some other properties because of direct needs, like we needed for property that had facilities where we lost the facilities because of Camp Fire. That's been a high priority. I have no problem with that. We've had some donations of property. Some of those donations have been right on point, meet our immediate mission for what we're trying to do. Some also, a few anyway, have our properties that were donated that may better fit with the buffer project and the possibility of wildland interface buffer protection. And we've gone that route. So I say we stay the course for now, but my biggest concern now is with the acquisition of all these different properties, we need our staff, our staff direction to identify these properties, share them with our Parks and Recreation Committee on a regular basis, prioritize what their status is in terms of, okay, do we have immediate maintenance obligations or not? How does that fit with the buffer project as it's further along? Those types of things, because we're not hearing much about that. And I think it's time for that, quite frankly. Those are my comments. I have no problem with approving the acquisition tonight, but I'm not necessarily trying to influence any of you. I'm just sharing my thoughts.
I think it would be nice, and we talked about this last month, is to have Butte's Fire Safe Council come talk to the board with what potential fire mitigation buffer project might look like and what kind of properties best suit that, along with how those properties could potentially be recreational properties as well, because all the properties will be Fire Safe Council agree. So let's have them here so we can hear what they're saying. And then we also talked about like a matrix, developing a scoring of what would make it a good property for the district to acquire or not in all of those case scenarios. And that would be nice to see, because the properties come up here and there and here and there. So you can't really prioritize which ones would be good to get over something else when we don't have a score system that we're aware of that can say, it scores 5 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 or something like that. So for me, that would be helpful to have something like that.
And Dan, I just want to get clarification in terms of extended liability. I would assume that since all of these properties would be unimproved, basically the doctrine of inherent risk gets in play, and we are not liable unless we make improvements, fences, sidewalks, railings, etc.
Yeah, that's essentially how our insurance rates are calculated. There's some, and Mr. McGreen knows more about this from the Capri side as well. But one thing I wanted to point out too that we should be well versed in is baked into our state constitution is trails and public access is paramount. It is in our constitution. And so there's a protection, there's a liability protection in there if someone allows access to it. Now that changes when you have improvements. So if you have a bridge, if you have a sidewalk, if you have some other things, you need to make sure that that's safe. But there is considerable protection for agencies and private landowners too. If there's a trail that's natural surface, public can have access to it, and there's protection against liability on it. Immunity.
Is anyone going to make a motion? Oh, is there any public comment online? Scott?
Mr. Chair, I just need to remind all the board members that the resolution documents that were originally provided for this agenda item had some errors in them. And so you were handed some corrected resolution documents. Hopefully you're aware of that. So if you take any action tonight, it's the corrected resolution documents I believe you want to entertain.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve resolution number 24-08-1-542 of the property located off Pence Road for the purchase from the county. Parcel number 55-300-039-000.
Before you may or may not get a second, my fellow board member, you're making a motion on a singular resolution, but the agenda item is both properties. Are you intending just only approve one property?
No, that I was anticipating perhaps other board members might want to split them because they might have intentions to, but
Just to clarify, in our board report, we do say it can be taken up together or separated out. So that fits in with that.
Okay, for the
Yeah, if you wish to do it, it may be cleaner to do it one at a time.
My wish is, because there may be variances from my vote, I will go with that motion singularly, the 542 resolution.
And it's near Pence Road, not on.
Near Pence Road.
I'll second it.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Director Al McGrean,
Aye.
Director Mary Belfe,
Aye.
Secretary Steve Broadwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin.
Aye.
And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Nay. Can we get a motion? on
Motion
that?
carries with 4 ayes and 1 nay.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve resolution number 2408-1-543, the purchase of the property APN 055-540-015-000 off of Zero Indian Springs from the county.
Director Roder, just a point of order here. That resolution, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, is 2408-2543.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I think that wasn't our clerk that did that, but it is, it should be with our nomenclature, that should be 2, correct?
In the recommendations, there's 2, and the actual original resolution says 1.
Am I correct? It says 1.
Oh, the agenda's correct. Yeah, could you read the numbers first?
Yeah, for that one, it's 24-08-2-543 for the resolution. The APN is 055-540-015-000. Wait, are we talking about?
Yeah, number. Thank you.
Okay.
So then the new resolution you gave us tonight is incorrect. Well, whoever gave it to us.
We'll have to correct that. So it's that number 1, I'm talking about page 15 here, but there's a new resolution in your hands, but that should reflect the agenda is correct. The agenda numbering system that the clerk just stated for us.
Okay, so the recommendation is the correct number, but the actual resolution has the incorrect.
Correct it.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Just making sure.
Thank you.
So to repeat for clarification, moves to approve item resolution 24-08-2-543 APN 55-540-015-000 number 0 Indian Springs Road for purchase from the county.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Director Alma Green,
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay,
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin,
Aye.
and Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Nay.
Motion carries with 4 ayes and 1 nay.
That brings us to a break. Let's take 10. Welcome back. And that we're now at the district report.
Actually, item 6.2, Mr. Chair.
Nope. Brings us to 6.2, neighbor to neighbor partner agreements. Dan?
I'll just say one thing and then we'll kick it over to Christy, but you heard a lot about the background of the program tonight. Christy's going to run through this solution that we've come up with to try and streamline additional process or partnership agreements to keep compliant with the grant and allow us to move forward pretty quickly. Christy.
Hi, good evening, directors. Our grant award contract stipulates that if we are to provide reimbursement at $2,500 or above to a partner organization, that we must have an agreement with that partner, which also makes sense for us just in terms of liability and that sort of thing. A lot of the partner organizations are submitting event proposals that are below that threshold, that $2,500 threshold, but cumulatively they can approach and exceed even the $5,000 limit. Tony's in Concal, for example, has submitted, I think, 5, and they're working on more event proposals, which is great because that's a third place. Third places are an important part of community gathering spaces. So, that's an example. Also, Paradise Stronger and their equilibrium space has submitted a multitude of proposals, and they're all just excellent. So instead of coming to the board for every single agreement that ranges between that $2,500 threshold and the $5,000 threshold, we're approaching the board to seek authorization for the district manager to enter into agreements with our partner organizations for that dollar threshold limit. Anything in excess of that $5,000 would trigger a board action, and we'd come back with either an additional agreement or a revision to the existing agreement so that it could go up to a higher level dollar amount. Because the way the grant functions, the partner organizations invoice us for the expenditures related to their events and their staff time in planning and then executing the events. We then bill the grant agency, but the money comes to us. And so we then pay the partners according to the documentation they provided to verify that their costs are, in fact, what was provided to us. So just because of that transfer of money, I think the contractual agreement is a good idea anyway. But we're hoping to expedite the process and not have to come to the board, every month with a whole set of new contract agreements to review and authorize. It's likely that some of these partner organizations, because of the breadth of their proposed events, and they're all really good, that they will exceed that $5,000 threshold, but we will come to the board with those, like I said, and seek approval for a contract revision to then increase the allowable flow of money from the grant agency to us and back to them for the costs that they incur.
One thing that might help folks on this, if you remember number lines. So you start with any amount from 0 to 2,499 is we don't need an agreement. We need an agreement more than 2,500, but we wanted to build in oversight and authorization from the board. So that's why we kept that sweet spot between 2,500 and 5,000 that we could have move forward with an agreement. And then if it's more than that, we need to run it by you guys, directors. I keep saying you guys, y'all. So that gives a chance to kind of, if there's something involved, we want to make sure that the board's aware of it. It gives us another comfort level. That number could be, if the board decides a different ceiling to it, but that seemed like a reasonable number for us to get stuff started. As we approach that number, we come back to the board if it's a more involved project that requires more expenses and I feel oversight, just to make sure that we're being good stewards of this important grant money we have.
Also, it's in the staff report, but I should mention that the agreement is vetted by our attorney, and it's the consultant agreement or cooperatives agreement that we have in place with like the Piranhas and the Paradise Swim Team and that sort of thing. So it's our regular templated legal document. It would just be edited for the scope of work and then the dollar amount.
Go
ahead.
I completely agree that this is needed to streamline the process. I'm curious though, right now, like with some of the applications you have in, how many are over 5,000? Or is there a lot that are still over the 5,000 mark?
As of 5:45, when I stopped printing them all off, and Kristen said we had 33, there's a pretty fat stack. Yeah, I can verify that at least 2 that I know of right now are going to be in excess of that $5,000 in Q4 alone. So it's likely going to increase every single quarter as they propose more and more events if they're successful.
Like 15 that are over 5,000.
So far, not yet.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Christy, at timing, because we kind of arbitrarily picked 5,000 because that would seem like a reasonable level to get us at least to the first quarter. If we have some that are good projects that match the criteria of the grant, and they're more than that, and the events are in this first quarter, how does that timing work with our calendar for our board meetings?
Yeah, that's a good question. It would be fine to have it go through at the next September board meeting, because the events would be happening post October. Also, it's mostly important that we have it in place when we seek reimbursement from the state. And so that would be at the beginning of January. But I think for us, it's better to have it done earlier rather than later, and have a really, really late board meeting going through a bunch of contracts on early January.
So the deadline for this coming quarter is tonight for the applications for the organizations, and you just shared with Jen and the rest of the board, you have 2 that are asking for 5,000 or plus. So I can see those 2 being subject to our board meeting in September with an agreement document, hopefully crafted by then, and for us to consider adopting. How much time do you think our legal counsel is going to be involved with this?
How much time? What? I didn't hear.
We have
Could you repeat what you said, Jeff?
How much time is our legal counsel going to be involved with this process?
Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the things, and I think the board knows this, when I got here, one of the first things we did early on was developing a standard, in quotations here, standard agreement for PRPD. That allowed us to do a kind of a streamlined approach. So if we were doing a new project of some kind, if we were mostly using that agreement and there was a scope of work, the lawyers really focus on the insurance, the terms, the indemnity, and so those things that are putting us exposure. They don't do a whole lot of review on the scope of work or the dollar amount. So they're assuming that dollar amount is coming from sources that's been approved with our budget, or we have a funding source through it, and then the scope of work is a lot of times just very technical. So it may be something that if it meets, they may have some language suggestions, but there's not much of a legal review on it. We've been working with our attorney right now on a couple of these agreements to get them standard. And there's been some evolution because we've had some needs for contracts right away that we utilize our old template, and there's been a low increment. We've been working with Marcia very diligently, at least a month, maybe 2 months on these to start. And so we've kind of crafted some good language. We have a whole slew of these going through with different pre-approved projects. And so there are a number of these contracts that we have to go through. The way we're doing any contracts that go to our partner or our consultant, partner agency, that they have everything is sent, track changes. It's going to go to our attorney for review on those track changes. So I think it'll streamline it, but we have a lot of these in the pipeline because the magnitude of work we're doing. But we try to simplify it and make it more of a system rather than 20 different contracts that are going through or cut and paste from the last one. So it's more of a standard approach. Hope that helps.
I got no problem with streamlining. I guess my only request, and you're probably going to do this anyway, any amount, maybe an end of quarter report, even if they ask for $20, not so much of an oversight thing, just like we'd like to know what we're doing. And so, if that can be prepared, at the end of the reporting quarter for the board, so we can see all the good stuff we're doing.
I'll mention, maybe you're going to mention this, but with that Golden Volunteers and event calendar, you'll be able to preview a lot of those. So if you get on those lists of information, we hope to get a lot of this stuff out to people so they know about it. So we'll definitely keep you guys in the loop. I don't know if either Kristen or Christy, if you have suggestions on maybe previewing those that the board can see. We have reports that go to the neighbor grant that are very detailed. I don't know if that's appropriate for here, but maybe there's a summary if you guys have ideas on that.
So the reporting mechanism that they have is pretty big buckets. And so our partner organizations would fall into a consultant bucket, which is not going to be very descriptive if you're looking for, hey, this partner was awarded this much in quarter 4, 2024. I think that's really interesting information, and I'd be happy to put that together for you guys. Also, we have
2-page PowerPoint. It's just like, okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, so you could see the good work that's happening, and then also probably put in, the number of people that attended the event, because I think that's informative too. And it's just kind of that goosebump, feel good parts of, doing this job, that we get to share this resource with organizations in the community that then benefit residents of the community that we serve in a way that, because of our capacity constraints, we're not able to do by ourselves. There are going to be times when we collaborate with organizations, and in those cases, like, we'll absorb some of the cost, and mostly we'd be paying for their staff time, for example, or maybe they cover some of the costs. And so it's not that every single organization that has multiple events is going to get into that contract threshold. But likely a lot of them will, just because of the volume.
This grant's very interested in metrics too. So, I mean, the numbers that we had on participation and unique visitors and, and so forth, they have some of that. I think certainly sharing numbers of events and kind of summary stuff we have, but, there might be, I know folks had mentioned this at the beginning, but the idea of the having a list of logos and partners, I think is really important. So, I think that would be something good as we have a significant partnership with somebody, and not just a vendor, but just like someone that's putting on an event. But any of that information, we can run reports on this. So if board members want the more detailed stuff that may be too much for a packet, we'll have that. So we can share that with you if you request it.
So I'm just trying to, the people you're calling partners is any partner organizations or any organization that applies for this grant. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And even if they don't approach that threshold, I guess they become sub-grantees technically if they meet or exceed that $2,500 reimbursement.
Okay, so I'm looking at, I just took a number 700,000 because instead of 750, but if you do $5,000 grants for 700,000, that's 140 grants between now and in 13 months. I mean, basically this, or 5 quarters. So that's about 140 grand a quarter. So I'm assuming that the $750,000 covers all the staff time that's involved in like looking through those 33 applications. And then, so they turn in an application, staff looks at it, staff submits it to Golden Volunteers and they say yay or nay. And then you let the partner know yay or nay based on what Golden Volunteer said, or?
Well, so we have studied the contract language and asked a bazillion questions to the grant agency. I'm sure they're sick of us. But we pre-vet the proposals, and some of them we've had to deny. There was something on to the equivalent of Paradise Citizens Alliance quarterly meetings, and that doesn't align with the grant goals of getting neighbors together. Okay. So that was too narrow of a niche, and some other ones. So we try and say, hey, if you could, if it could do this, it might better match the goals. We've had to turn some people down. But we try and share it because we only have 17 months, and yes, our staff time is covered. So we have electronic timesheets, or some staff still use the like handwritten ones and the template. But right in their time, this hour was spent reviewing proposals or what have you. So that's where the bulk of this $12,255.44 was from Q2, which was our first quarter running this grant. And in large part, that was staff planning, doing the training workshops for our potential partner organizations, because we did 2.
Right.
And it was time intensive to get up to speed ourselves, and then to present to the partners, answer their questions by email. So every time we're doing that, we, are keeping track on our time card so that we can bill it to the grant.
Okay. It sounds like,
oh, sorry, Director.
It seems like every organization in PCA should be coming up with some way to apply for this money.
and mentioned that the kind of the business meeting wouldn't work, but what would work is if they all had booths and some sort of fair type situation where people were there and so forth. So, I think something like that might be something that comes in.
At the PCA meeting?
No. But the PCA members can then share with the public, here we exist, this is what we do, and there's something fun tied in. Like, it'd be great if they all showed up at the September 7th event, so all the PCA members could be there. And by the way, it's Paradise Citizens Alliance. If folks are looking for the acronym on that. Yeah. One thing I was going to mention too, that I think Christy touched on this, but a lot of the organization, this is a cost reimbursable grant. And so an organization that is run by volunteers, we can pay for some of the supplies. There's no staff to pay. Right. And they may have capacity on being able to do that. And there are very particular requirements on this grant. And so we're trying to do some training so people have it, but it's probably going to be easier if we're there running the golden volunteer sign in with our tablet that has a, a good connection, having some of the protocols in place. If they want to use our projector and screen, our staff's going to run that. But it could be part of their event. So say partner events, there have been a lot of extent, us partnering or us, matchmaking between partners on things. So it kind of gets tricky with some of these organizations that are small, have a good mission, but how are they getting reimbursed for some of their costs when they don't have staff time?
Right. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Christy. We get a motion? No. Can we get public comments? Anyone online, Scott? All right.
I make a motion that we authorize, excuse me, the district manager to execute agreements with partner organizations supporting the neighbor to neighbor grant for cost reimbursement from $2,500 to $5,000.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Director Alma Green,
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay,
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin,
Aye.
Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
And that brings us to the district report. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This starts on page 25. Well, I guess our first thing on there, and this seems like it was so long ago, but I guess it wasn't. I want to congratulate Director McGreehan for his selection to the Chief Financial Officer, CFO for PRPD. Just a couple of quick updates. We have our budget actuals. There was a request from the board to have end of year numbers. So our June 30th numbers have been updated on our budget narrative and on our website. And we could certainly email that to anyone that requests it. Just send a note to Sarah, and we can email that to you, or if you need a printout, let us know. This is really, I think, complimentary to the organization. Our wage and, or excuse me, our class and comp study is well underway. This was wonderful to hear from the agency. So they do a lot of these. They do a lot of these with different entities, and they made a point of complimenting us a couple of meetings here recently because of our staff involvement. We had an exceedingly high participation rate in comparison to some of their agency that they're evaluating. And they told us quite clearly that they want to make sure we knew that our staff love what they do, and they can see that it shines through. And so it was just nice to hear that from an independent third party that talks to cities, counties, special districts all over the state, to give us that compliment. Like, it was notable. They said they did not seen that. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. We had good information. One of the things that we are going with them are the selection of comparable agencies, and there's some challenges with that. One of the entities on the list here that we need to add is looking at Feather River Rec and Park District. Some of the entities have challenging, as they refer to it, not transparent information. They're not readily accessible on their websites and job descriptions and so forth. So they'll have to dig into it a bit more. We are working through a process right now where we're trying to look at not only geographical spread, but they will make an adjustment on cost of living. One question that came up was the idea of certain communities that have experienced wildfire have some similar struggles with staffing and other things that they may recommend that as sort of an important criteria for us. The list here has, and you'll see, I mean, there's a wide variety of districts here, but try to pick ones that are within kind of Sacramento Valley region. Try try to get some rural districts, although that can be challenging to get something that's comparable. But locally, Card and Feather River will likely be on the list, depending on what they're going to do a quick analysis on Feather River, see if what information they could get from that. I just want to kind of point out that list. Be happy to take questions, after the meeting if you guys have on that or suggestions on looking at criteria. They'll work through that. And there will be a little bit like other comparables, like this district has this size budget, serves this population. It's a little challenging with some of the districts down in larger areas because they pull their population from zip code information. And so Sacramento metropolitan area shows up for, half of these. So it'll say 526,000. Well, that's not the population they're serving. They're serving, a small fraction of that. So there'll have to be some adjustments and discussion of that. But I just want to kind of explain a little bit of that beforehand. I'm going to, one thing I was going to mention too, before we kick it over to our rec staff to look at some great things that are happening. Was a response to park fire. So we had some park closures for a couple of reasons. One, most of our parks were under at least a warning, and a big majority of our staff were in evacuation areas. So we had challenges staffing. It did not feel prudent or smart, and we do have under California code, there's emergency situation authorization to close parks for safety and health issues and so forth. So we opted for a closure on it. We kept Paradise Lake lingered that closure for an extended period of time because they were doing for a time helicopter siphon or bucket refills at the lake. We did not want those urban myths of a scooped up kayaker clinging to the bottom of a helicopter carried forth. So we kept it closed until we got some coordination with CAL FIRE that responded back and said we were kind of cleared for that. So, from I think coordination standpoint, it was a good test for local agencies to see how they communicate. And it'll be interesting, some of the after action analyses of the event from kind of a local response. And town did activate their emergency operations center, was in on some of those briefings, which was very helpful, I think, for us to judge how things might go from day to day. One thing I wanted to point out on our PRPD profit and loss budget versus actuals, couple of interesting trends on here. So one thing that you'll notice that is not typical and may change any other month, our biggest source of income for last month was grant income. So, I know that's been a big concern because that has been lagging and slow on the returns, but we're starting to catch up, and certainly 127K is nothing to sneeze at for that. Another important thing for us, I think, is our program income, and that was a good thing. We're going to have to, over this next year, as directors know, keep an eye on our budget and expenses. So, I think that's something that we'll look at from time to time. And there are a couple things here. Let's see, I was going to pick out one of them. Oh, just some of them, the timing of it. So, for example, our insurance payment, and I'm looking at line item 5,300, already at 49%. Well, we have 2 payments a year. So we're done with this one. It'll kind of catch up on our fraction of the year versus total. So I think that will, that'll sit at that high amount until halfway through the year when we get our second bill on there. So just a couple of things on that. Recreation staff, are you ready?
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Could you go back to that budget for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please. The budget column is the annual amount, or is that broken down?
That's correct. Our
that's the
budget, we have an
annual-
annual budget. Yeah, so that's a total for the year.
Okay, so you referenced the program income and the grant income versus the 276,000 and the 1.3 million. So down on expenses, does that 162,000, that's 73% of the total budget for the year? Because that figures $221,970. So I'm confused. On 5010. On profit
Page
and
are you on,
loss.
by the way?
I'm on page 38.
38. Oh, quite clearly that is incorrect on the budget in there. So that's a miss. I bet we're missing
I mean, it's printed right off a QuickBooks.
something missing a zero, I think, a
Something
decimal
wrong.
point or something but that's misentered. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, what we need to do is go back, compare this with our budget. So
I went back and I pulled the budget and I'm thinking something's not correct.
That's
so
clearly.
that's right off a QuickBooks. So something's typoed wrong. So
I think what happened there probably I'm guessing a decimal point, but an error in when that was entered from our adopted budget into QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And so we'll definitely fix that.
all right, thank you. Because I was a little like, what?
Yeah. One more month and we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Exactly.
Thank you.
That's well, I thought, okay, that made me think this 221,000 is just the budget from
For the
July
month.
till
Yeah,
from
no,
June,
no.
you know, July 1. And I'm thinking, but that doesn't make sense. And I even pulled the budget and it said that. And I'm like, something's weird here.
Let us look into that
Okay.
and hopefully next month there won't be a question on it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, board. I'll highlight a few things and let Scott go. So, it's hard to believe these things were less than a month ago. It seems like way longer. It seems like I always say that. We had the Pinewood Derby last month on July 18th. It wasn't a huge turnout compared to some that we've had in the past, but this place was pretty packed. I mean, you don't get that many kids, but they each bring 5 or 6 family members with them. So this place fills up pretty good. We had the dive-in movie, Jaws, at the Paradise Pool, July 19th, the next day after the Pinewood Derby. It was packed. We thought we had close to 200 people in there. The capacity of the pool is 250. So I was getting kind of worried we were going to have to turn people away. We had people, I don't know if there's pictures in here, but you can see the setup. It came out really good at the pool. There was a lot of maneuvering with electrical cords and wires to keep them well away from the water. But it came out really good. As you can see, we had people all over the deck. We had people in the pool on floaties. It was a lot of fun that night, and it was a neighbor to neighbor event. The lifeguards did a really good job keeping track of all the people. Moving on to the aquatics with the fire, we did have 5 days where the pool shut down, the Paradise Pool, being that not just not wanting the public to be out in the smoke on certain days, but also the staff that have to be out there lifeguarding for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And also when we were under evacuation for a couple of days there. Concal only had to close 1 day. They weren't under evacuation and they weren't as smoky out there from what I was told and what it looked like on Purple Air. Let's see, a couple of things to highlight in the aquatics. It'll be interesting to do the pool report this year and see exactly how everything came out. But I did figure out that we had an average of 26 people per class in aqua aerobics, which the time I did this report, the end of last year, we had 23 average throughout the whole summer in aqua aerobics. So we're right close to that, a little higher. We had the Boys and Girls Club using the Paradise Pool all summer. We had the Golden Feather School District using the Concal Pool. We're in the process of billing them. The PHS and Home Tech swim teams started this week or are starting this week in our pool. Their contracts are all up to date and they're ready to go. The Piranha's finished in late July, and they'll be needing a new updated contract going into next spring for their program. And then there's also a couple pictures of the lifeguards doing some training that you can see in the packet. A lot of people don't know that, but throughout the summer, the lifeguards do a lot of physical fitness. They do a lot of swimming. They do a lot of training at the pool, emergency preparedness and whatnot. So we had a really good staff this summer. The regular pool season ended August 10th. Concal's closed for the summer. Paradise is open with an adjusted schedule. They're open Monday through Friday right now for adult and rec swim from noon to 3. And then we're going to continue aqua aerobics, as long as we can have lifeguards, because a lot of the guards go back to college, go back to high school, and we lose a lot of them, but we're keeping it going with a modified schedule for the time being. And we're hoping to keep aqua aerobics going into September, through the end of September, hopefully, if we have lifeguards to accommodate that. I usually try to highlight a few things each month on the report. We have other things going on too. One big one is softball, adult softball. We just started the second half of the season, and that will go through the end of September. There's 25 teams, adult teams competing in that program at Moore Road 3 days a week. So that's been going really well. That's about it for me.
So we're still confined to just Moore Roads complex for softball. When are we going to have interaction with the school district at the high school to use their fields? Is that in the mix?
We do have a overall agreement with them.
that, but
and we could utilize it under that. I know that in the past we had a very specific one that was tied in with us doing maintenance on the field,
right?
Which we let expire because it didn't make sense because we weren't using the field, and yet we were obligated for maintenance on the field. So but Jeff can address the process we use. We use school facilities whenever we need to.
Yeah, and as of now, it's honestly it's just easier to have it up at Moore Road. We're only using it 3 nights a week, even with 25 teams, and there might be a time when we're using it 5 nights a week at Moore, and we want to have a league over there. But at this time, we don't really need it.
How about the tournaments? They're all easily accommodated at Moore Road only?
They have been, yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Okay. Just thought I'd ask. It's just a beautiful field down there, and it seems like it's just not being utilized to its full extent, but we'll see.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. If Jeff really went over everything that just happened this last month, he'd be up here for another 20 minutes and I'd be up here for another 20 minutes. It's the most impactful and busiest, I want to say most active, because we get busy at other times of year, but we've just been doing it all and it's all been going very, very well. Astronomy on the Lake was sold out again, and it was another amazing night. By popular demand, we're going to add 2 more, and they're already sold out. So it's the neatest darn thing.
Did you say they're already filled up?
Yeah, they're already filled up. I mean, it's not official, but I'm telling you, they're already full. Like the second they go up, whoosh. So get your tickets quick, Mary.
Where are they posted?
They'll be posted when the activity guide's done later this week or early next week when the digital one goes up.
Okay.
We've had people calling and asking about it.
I know, I hear all about
it. So just by the notes that are sitting on my desk.
So are you limiting it to the number of kayaks the district has, or can somebody bring their own kayak?
Very well said. So what we found out this year over dishes with my wife, and I looked over her and I'm like, I don't want to go rent more kayaks from the forebay. She said, well, then just limit it to the number of kayaks we have, which will put us around 20 rentals per event. The way that we offered it to the public this last year, there was a little bit of a communication. We only offered 40 slots total, whereas we can actually have probably 70 or 80 people out there at a time, but we only have 20 kayaks to rent personally. So that's how we're going to move forward, is as long as you're bringing your own kayak, $20 and join the crew. So
One of the, and this isn't that bad of a problem, but when the lake is up, there's kind of limited shore access. And so I think a combination of like parking and where people can even sit gets hard with the lake level being up relatively high.
but it's we can see Roberts Rock now this year. So were you the one that told me it was Roberts Rock?
No,
No,
but I know the rock you're talking about.
but it is Roberts.
It's about this far above. the
It
surface.
is. It is. Someone told me it was called Roberts Rock, and Dan and I aren't. Anyways, so we'll be able to see that this year. And in general, the kayaking program has a lot of learned lessons this year. One of them is that we have a slamming astronomy program up there. So, yeah. So yeah, we got a couple more of those coming. Summer camps. Last year I stood right here and you all said, hey, let's make some more summer camps. And we did, and they went really well. How well did they go? About 50 to 60% capacity by the time the summer was over. There were a couple of camps with very low numbers, but were very highly impactful in that they're niche camps anyways. The switch camp only had a couple participants. The drone camp only had a couple of participants. And we don't have great reasons why. We know that our follow-up system is one of the things that we're going to take a look at this year. We don't have a great funnel system that dumps people back into the funnel camp after camp after camp, exposing them to their next great PRPD experience. That's one of the things I think we're looking at this year as far as lessons learned for our camp numbers. Nonetheless, we served nearly 250 people with no injuries. And I'll say that again. These are children between the ages of 4 and 18, and there was not one incident report. We have such well-trained staff that I think that we should be proud we kept everyone safe physically, mentally, and emotionally. And we did that while there was a massive fire happening. So the camp still ran because they were indoors. I'm really, really proud of my staff in this season of gratitude, to say the least. We did find out some news about outdoor education for all, the Cal State Parts Grant. We were waiting for that information. It does not exist. So we will not be getting the funding for the Cal State Parks Grant. There'll be a lot of reverberation on that as far as how the Elements program looks moving forward. We're still in a very good place because that grant was extended. And of course, now we have some other needs to meet. There have been 3 fires in the area since this next iteration of Elements has come about. So it's going to be very fire centric and trauma informed. Healing trauma through nature. It was the middle of the summer, so we started getting calls about onboarding a new school down in Orville. Hearthstone is now the 3rd school joining Butte County Community School and Mesa Vista. So with the 3rd school, we're welcoming more staff for that, as well as pulling me out of the field to focus on other development programs, specifically these 2 programs that I'd like everyone to see on here. I didn't put the dollar amounts in here at the time, and the contract for the Yuba College is up for review. It's in process. These are single day programs that will profit us enough money. Let me say it this way. One day with the Yuba College team will keep more money than all of the summer camps throughout the entire summer. So as far as cost offsetting is concerned, the value of these college-based small programs offset some of the challenges of having low numbers in other camp programs. So we did very well this summer as well. And of course, reports for that will be coming out soon.
So just to go back to the Cal Parks grant.
Yeah.
Or Cal State Parks grant. So the outdoor education for all will still happen except for the Youth Advisory Council? Is that
everything is still happening? How they happen and what their vision looks like was predicated on, another $600,000. So now all the partners in outdoor education for all are going, well, that would have been nice. What's our next plan? So that group in general is kind of recouping. And then because they're recouping, how we, as the anchor for that program, we need to take a look at that as well. So it's not going anywhere. It's probably just look a little bit different. And I think you'll be happy to hear with this tightening, it moves us back up the ridge. And we are now focusing even more on the ridge than we were before, with some of these other schools obviously being down in Chico and in
Thank you.
Orville. I guess I could stand up here for 20 minutes. What else you want to know?
Thank you, Scott.
Pleasure. There's an activity guide coming up. Yeah, be prepared. It's going to be great.
That brings us to board comment. Jen?
Nope, I don't have anything.
Al? Mary?
Sure. Patch had a marketing firm come and they're doing a community survey and through web marketing company. And the gentleman's name is Duncan Webb, and he is has met with all the people involved with Patch, and then he's going to meet with people around town. And he was at the UDA thing on Saturday talking to all the town council people and town employees that were there, which was great. PRPD, some staff met with the Paradise Community Center. I don't know if anybody's been by there on Lindley Road, but there's well, they aren't studs because they're not metal, but I mean, they aren't wood, but it's got the supports, the metal supports for the walls and the roof and all that over by the PPAC. So that's exciting. It's like fun watching it go up. And that's it.
Steve?
Mark your calendars. August 28th, the Paradise Animal Shelter expansion groundbreaking at 11 o'clock. I think it's a Wednesday. It's a chamber event. So yeah, if you forget that date, look on the chamber calendar. It'll be a fun time. It'll be a time to celebrate the furry critters.
Director Roderick, I've already forgotten the date. What was the date again?
August 28th.
Thank you.
11 o'clock.
I got your email on the BLM wanting to hear about access. And I got on the maps and saw that Dean Road almost makes it to the river, and that's BLM land. If they could pave that road and switch back it a few more times, maybe get us a parking lot and bathrooms down there and do trails along this side of the river, that would be a lot of recreational access for people who can't make that hike down there. Little kids and elderly, and there's a lot of old fishermen that want to go fishing down there, but they can't get down there.
That from the end of the road across the Miocene is pretty steep down there. But I was going to ask you if you dropped in comments for it. And for folks that don't know, there's BLM is having an access input on any of the properties in California, basically. So that seems like a very good, worthy comment to send to them, because I think they're genuinely trying to get good comments and open up access to places.
I mean, because Butte Creek has a lot of access points, but here on the ridge, you got a great river down there, but it's bigger than that one. And supposedly has some great swimming holes and waterfalls.
Used to.
I've never been down there. I went down to the bottom of the road in my Volvo, and it was hard to do.
And there is a trail from Koodalink Road down to the West Branch, and it's been lost, at least as far as I know.
Yeah, but is it BLM?
I don't know, but it's if it's not BLM, it's
BLM
State or Park Forest Service.
Oh, BLM ended up with a lot of land that was old claims that didn't keep getting filed on. So they got a lot of river land. Maybe you guys know other properties that could gain access to water.
I think Mike Trinka knew where that trail was, but it might have, after the fire, it might have just been.
I've tried to walk some of it and it's not easy. I'm sure it's even harder than when I walk down to see where it is.
All right. Let's adjourn this meeting to our next regular meeting on September 11th. Thank you.